The Wellness Show, episode 197. Welcome to The Wellness Show, a podcast on health and wealth. I'm your host, Tyhson Banighen, the founder of the Extraordinary Healing Arts Academy. Join me as we get the latest insight, tips, and strategies from wellness providers, coaches, and successful, heart-centered entrepreneurs, and much, much more. Welcome to the Wellness Show, and today we have Coach Nick. And the topic we're going to discuss is one that we started when he interviewed me. It's called The Beautiful Struggle. And I think talking to Coach Nick is really the appropriate person to talk to about this. Is, you know, Coach Nick, you're really been juggling two worlds. A busy world. You've just been interviewing all sorts of people to make it to this show. And then not only that, you've got a program that you've launched, and I don't know how many people you've got in that program. I'm one of them, and I don't know about you. I'm so busy I can't even do it. I don't know how you lead it. And then on top of that, you are a part of a spiritual practice that keeps you busy. So that's the beautiful struggle we want to talk about for those that are on the spiritual path. How do you keep all that together and run a business? So welcome to the show, Nick.
Thank you so much, Tyhson. I so appreciate you interviewing me and for us to pick up this conversation.
Yeah, I think it's a really important conversation that anybody who's on a spiritual path is, you know, how do you bring prosperity into your life? I mean, you have such a passion to give that, you know, some of us just give, and irregardless of whether we have the financial return, it's just something we can't help ourselves. So I think a lot of people are in that dilemma, and I think, Nick, you're one of the few that's really wrestled with that one in many different ways. So I'd love to have some of your insights into that area so that we can have our tribe out there, both of our tribes, get a sense of, you know, how do you balance those two worlds, the entrepreneur and the spiritual path?
Yeah, so for me, the entrepreneurial and the spiritual path are the same path. They exercise different aspects of who we are. So one of the things about the spiritual path is this idea that we give up the material world, right? We give up the material plane. Now, in a way that is true, but it's to understand what is material and what is spiritual. Material, in the definition that I know material from the yogic philosophies that I practice, is that material means disconnected from source or disconnected from God, or whatever name you know God by or source by. So material means when we are doing things for our own gratification. Generally we're trying to gratify our own senses, our body, or our ego. Spiritual means connected to source or connected to God or whatever name you know God by. So when you are building your business, if you are building it from a consciousness or from a heart of service, so I'm a Bhakti yoga practitioner, and Bhakti means devotion. And so when you build your business and you do it from a space of Bhakti, devotion, you build your business for the well-being, you build your business for source, and source is creation, then naturally you have a service mentality or a service spirit about you. And now your spiritual practice is your business, and your business is your spiritual practice. The key for me is something called what's called karma yoga. So in the ancient text Bhagavad Gita, it basically outlines 4 types of yogas: karma yoga, dhyana yoga, jnana yoga, and bhakti yoga. Karma yoga means using the work or the duty that you have in the world. So in the Bhagavad Gita, it says, Krishna says to his disciple Arjuna, Krishna says, do what you must do in the world. Do your work. You know, if you're a mom, be a mother. If you're a father, be a father. If you're an entrepreneur, be an entrepreneur. Do your work and do it well. It's actually better to do your work imperfectly than someone else's work perfectly. But give your results to me. And what that means, what Krishna is saying is give up the attachment to the result. Do it for love. Do it for service. But know that you will be rewarded. know that if you do your work well, you'll be rewarded. So you can receive openly, but you should also be unattached to what you receive. The challenge is that the entrepreneurial world is that people begin to disconnect receiving, or they think receiving is a selfish act. Receiving is not a selfish act. Receiving in the right consciousness is also a selfless act, because it is an opportunity for someone to give, to serve you. So as much as we want to serve others, always remember one of the greatest gifts that you could give someone is the opportunity to serve as well. So we have to be open to that. So I practice karma yoga within my business, which is the practice of staying unattached to the results and staying unattached to what I'm receiving. But when it's time for me to be served, I also recognize that's a service for the individual. It is a service to allow someone to pay you, because if they don't pay you, how will you, first of all, live, right? How will you do your thing? And not only that, what are you saying to them? You're saying that you're not acknowledging the abundance within them and the source within them. So this is, for me, the way that I have come to be okay with growing my business, charging, going out, doing business. It's fine to do business. It's fine to make money. It's when you make it about the money that all of a sudden it starts to take you away from the spiritual path.
So then the question, and thank you for that. That's a great explanation, that for you, there's no separation between the material and the spiritual. In fact, you spiritualize the material so that it's part of your path. And that makes perfect sense to me. Do you find, or have you been down this, this struggling path, or maybe it's not a struggle for you anymore? I guess I'm curious about, do you have to catch yourself periodically to reawaken, like Siddhartha had to go back to the river to remember the stream of enlightenment? Like, do you lose it and have to remind yourself? And if you do lose it, become so engrossed in doing and not being, for example, what sort of techniques do you use to bring yourself back to being in the divine flow?
Yeah, that's a great question. And yes, absolutely. I'll get caught up in the material part of it. And that's the practice, right? We're human. We're all going to get caught or sucked into that. As you mentioned, Siddhartha also did as well, right? And so it's also, I don't deny the human parts of life, right? It is all part of the learning journey. It is all part of the journey that we are on to become fully spiritual, or to be able to conquer the body and the mind. It is so important for me, and I assume for anybody who's serious about their spiritual journey, that you put your spiritual practice first, your sadhana first. So what that means is before I start my day, I get up early and I do something called japa meditation. So this is my japa bag, and I chant. All right, so I'm a Hare Krishna. And that means that I chant the Hare Krishna mantra, right? And so every day I chant the Hare Krishna mantra, and I follow the principles that my guru handed down to me to say, this, you follow these principles, you chant this mantra each day, and this will keep you on your path. And what I've noticed is, as time goes on, the mantra itself protects me. The mantra itself keeps me on the path. And when I stray off the spiritual path and I become caught in my own puffed up ego about how awesome I think I am, or how awesome I don't think I am, depending on the circumstance or what I'm dealing with, right? Whatever opinion I hold of myself, when I recognize that I'm in that world, I just come back to the Hare Krishna mantra. I come back to the mantra, and the mantra, it's like, boom, it's a little loving slap from source that says, hey, come back to me. And over time, you get better at it. Over time, there's this steadiness that begins to happen. And, people ask me, Nick, how do you do so much? Like, you seem to be online, you seem to be doing your practice, well, the better the meditation, or the more quality the meditation, the more efficient you become in your day. So there's little resistance within yourself, so you can move from one task to the next without second guessing or, oh, geez, what about this or what about that? And when things go a little astray, as it will in the material world, you have a very good acceptance about it. This is it. This is the material world. Welcome to planet Earth. It's a beautiful planet. It's a wonderful place to be, but it's imperfect, just like I'm imperfect, and just like, we all are imperfect. And so as imperfect beings, we are perfectly imperfect as the material world is. And I truly trust, I give my life to Krishna, I give my heart to Krishna, and say, and Krishna is what I call God, so people understand, hey, look, you're in charge. I'm going to do my best with where I'm at, and I'm going to hand over the rest to you.
So do you find some freedom in doing that? I mean, when I remember to do that, into thy hands, O Lord, I commit my soul, or whatever words you want to use. When you surrender, that big, surrendering, that your life has more ease and grace, that, like you say, there's less effort in the struggle of trying to stay on the path. You're just on the path. It's almost like you say you wake up that something happened when you're not on the path and you remember to chant. It's sort of like it becomes a part of who you are, I guess.
Yeah, and absolutely. There's tremendous freedom in surrendering. It's one of the toughest things to do, right? Because our there's, I like to say, you have an identity crisis. When you surrender, I know this, I'm just speaking from my own personal experience, my own beautiful struggle. Okay, Nick, surrender. Just give it up. Give up the story. Give up the personality. Give up the struggle. Give up the whatever you've got on the go, right? Just give it up and surrender to that moment. Surrender to a higher power. But who am I? I'm Coach Nick. But that means I'm not Coach Nick. Well, no, I'm not. Coach Nick is a role I play right now. I'm Coach Nick. But you know what? In 15, 20 minutes when this interview's done, you know what? I'm dishwasher Nick, who's got to go wash some dishes, right? And I'm spouse Nick, who's going to go hang out with Sarah, and I'm take care of the cat Nick and go scoop the kitty litter Nick, right? So as you could see, moment to moment, each soul moves from one label to the next, from one shell or experience to the next. If we deem one experience to be more important than another, then we disconnect from source in those moments that we think, and we're disconnected the whole way, but we really suffer in that disconnection, because when I'm dishwasher Nick, my ego may be going, well, this isn't what Coach Nick is about. Coach Nick gets interviewed and Coach Nick transforms lives. But Coach Nick doesn't do anything like that. Coach Nick just shows up. And so, that's it. It's it's about surrendering and giving up this importance that we think we are, or this, even the work that we do. Do me and you do important work? I think we do important work, but I don't know that it's that important. I'm not really sure. Like, I just know I think it's important because I've been given that work. If you ask the ant, is the work you do important? The ant's going to say yes, of course, because everybody is going to, whatever work we've been given, again, this is our karma, whatever work we've been given, it's important for us, right? So
yeah,
it's important for us because we're doing it, right? But we shouldn't also be that attached to it. So surrendering, yes, it gives you tremendous freedom, and it allows you to enjoy all aspects of your life, even washing the dishes.
I like what you're saying here. It's not just surrender in the moment that you feel connected to source or to God. It's surrender in every moment, to be present in that ineffable beauty of the moment, and not try and judge it, like you said, or that Coach Nick doesn't wash this or doesn't clean the kitty litter. I like the whole aspect of you talking about basically, I can't remember the words you used, but basically just show up. I mean, that becomes your job now. It's not something you're struggling about. It's just you get up in the morning, you do your asanas, you do whatever you need to do, and you show up, and you're guided into what needs to be done, so that your job is to be present in the divine flow. And when you're not, to get back there. It's not as though you're not in charge of the show, so to speak, when you do the surrender. It's like learning how to show up.
That's right. You know, in like, if you imagine a play, there's a villain in the play, and there's a hero in the play or in the movie. But in actuality, they are, right, you know, there may be like a servant and a master in the play. So in the play, someone may think, I am puffed up. I am the master and you are the servant. But in actuality, they're both servants to the director. That's the reality. So we watch the play and say, oh, you know, this one is the master and this one is the servant, and these are the roles. But the reality is that they're both servant to the director, which is unseen in the play, right? So in the same way, we may have some role to play in this lifetime, but we shouldn't be too attached to it, because in the next time, in this life, you may be master. In this life, I may be Coach Nick. In the next life, who knows, right? Who knows what I'll be doing. So I'll have some other role, some other service, some other work. So in that way, even our lifetime here is short-lived in the eyes of an eternal being. You are eternal spirit soul. And so you should play your role. You should do it nicely, but at the same time, you shouldn't be so attached to it, because you never know what's going to happen. I may be Coach Nick, and then tomorrow something happens. I get a phone call, and I don't know what's going to come up next, right? So when we're too attached to what it is, who we think we are and what we think we are, then we struggle in it, because there is no way, because when you have to go clean the kitty litter, your own ego is going to be like, well, that's not what I'm about, right? I'm here to, do whatever. So in this way, we just do the moment. You do the best in the moment, and then Source will guide you. Source will say to you, and Source will talk to you in whichever way. For me, it's an inner knowingness. It's an inner guidance of, hey, you know what? Do this. Go here. Show up here. Message that person. Go chant. Go rest. And if you follow that, you'll be guided to beautiful places. But you have to be aware. You have to listen.
Yeah, that's the synchronicity. I mean, the synchronicity is in every single moment. It's just that if you're not attuned, or if you're struggling, or then you miss the synchronicity. That's always present. It's always there for you. So how, as a coach, Coach Nick, do you deal with helping people get from where they are to where they want to be? Because you're asking people to reach, a man's reach should be beyond his grasp, or what's a heaven for. You're asking to reach for something outside of themselves. Yet in our own practice and your practice, it's really being here in the moment. So how do you deal with that duality of being okay with where you are and loving yourself for what's unfolding now, your dharma in the moment, right? Mm-hmm. And how do you deal with that, aspiration of being a coach, or even your own aspiration of doing better or succeeding? How do you do? It seems there's some duality there. So how do you handle that in your life?
Yeah, no duality. It's that the universe is consistently expanding. And what expanding means is that it's consistently growing, learning, right? There's this playfulness to the universe. So I believe Dr. Wayne Dyer said we must be complete in incompletion, meaning that we are spirit soul. You are a complete being, whole and complete. And this is what you have to know about yourself in your heart of hearts, right? This is who I am. The work that I'm doing on the planet is not who I am. It is something I'm engaged with, and I will do it to the best of my ability. I will help people as much as I can. And I also recognize that any inspiration that I may have, it's not my inspiration. Any aspiration that I have as well is not my aspiration. If I intend, or if I have this dream or vision of being some big coach and maybe thousands of people coming to connect with me, that dream or vision has only been given to me by Source. So in a way, it is not my dream also. right? So when you understand that your aspiration is the universe itself trying to create through you, then there's no duality to it. You realize that it's only the illusion of I, the illusion of me. Oh, I have these dreams. I don't have a dream. I just serve. The dream that has been given in this body is Krishna's dream, is the dream of the source. And also, when you know this, when you absolutely know this, then you have no doubt about its fruition. Because why wouldn't it? If God or source can create planets and universes, then why can't it create whatever vision I'm seeing? So this is what I tell people, that, you know, you have a talent, you have a dream, you have something. Recognize that that the only way that it's not going to come true is because you think it's you. But as soon as you realize you are only servant to that dream, then there's no way that it can be stopped.
Brilliant. I have a Buddhist friend who says, you need to know that you can't ever get it wrong, but you can certainly make it more difficult. And that's what you're saying, you know.
That's right. I like that. Yeah, totally. I've caused a lot of my own difficulties in my life because of the false illusion that my dreams were mine. But you see, as a practicing yogi now, as a bhakti yogi, what I realized is that none of these aspirations or talents are really mine. They are all source's talents. I think, and again, I'll butcher this a little bit, but it's like we are the hands, we are his hands to create. We are his eyes. So we should create, but create understanding, knowing that you're only serving the source's creation. Duality only comes from the false ego. So nothing is in duality. Duality, it only arises in the mind. But if you know that you are not the body or mind, there is no duality. So you just do your work. Krishna says to Arjuna, do your work. It's better to do your work imperfectly than another person's work perfectly. Meaning you have a work, you have a karma, you have some stuff to do it because it's part of your evolution. So, what I look at when I'm coaching somebody is, what are they good at naturally? Wow, you're really good at making things beautiful. Well, beauty is an element of the source. The source is all beautiful. So the beauty that you want to bring into the world through your art, through your writing, through your, creation, whatever, maybe you look at something and you can see how it can be beautiful. That is the source within you. Try to extend itself. Knowledge is another aspect of the source. A source is all knowledgeable. So as us sharing knowledge, that is source sharing knowledge. Our job is simply to get out the way. And in that way, remember that your desires, what you think is your desire, is actually source's desire. So in a way, if you, the false ego, can get out the way and stop making it about you and making it about service, then all your desires, which aren't really yours, but we'll say they're yours, will also get fulfilled, because your desire is source's desire, because you and source are one of the same. You are part and parcel of source. So therefore, it is impossible that your desires will not come into fruition. The only reason it won't come into fruition is because you are caught up in the false story of who you think you are. And that's what all spiritual practices or yogas are about. Yoga means union. Get back into union with God, with source, and recognize that is your truest and realest relationship. Serve that relationship and all other desires will be fulfilled, right? That's what yoga means. Yeah. Religion means realign. Spirituality means to be connected. It's all different words pointing to the exact same state of consciousness.
Yeah, I think so many people are spending so much time wrestling with themselves. I'm not good enough, or I need to learn this, or I need to go to school in order to succeed, or
Yes.
I didn't get an A and I need to do this and I need to do that. And what you're saying is really disconnecting you from the divine flow of who you are. And that if you can just still your mind in whatever way or whatever practice you're called to, then you'll be in the right place at the right time for the next step to show itself. But, for most people, that is, that's a huge gigantic, and that's almost like receiving the possibility of a message in a bottle. I mean, it's not really a common knowledge for most people on this planet.
Yeah, because
you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
People are so involved in the struggle that, what do you mean stop struggling? I mean, that's what we're being taught in order to succeed. So I think what you're saying is absolutely brilliant. The other point that I loved is you bringing in the dream or the dreamer. One of my best friends is a follower of Sai Baba, and his book is called The Dreamer. And it was through his dream as a little child, and growing up, that he kept having this dream. And it wasn't until he met Sai Baba that he realized that was the progenitor of his dreams, that he was being guided through his dreams to manifest it into reality. And I find that exciting because many of us think of dreams as another world, as something we don't necessarily pay attention to, or we need to have some dream interpreter make sense of it. But it's another parallel reality that's coming into this reality as we learn that we're multidimensional beings, and that the dreams are as valid and as brilliant as ways to be guided and to learn as this 3D reality that we think is the only reality. Anyway, I love the concept of the dreamer because it really triggered that in me, that how multidimensional we are and how awake we are starting to become, that all of this is valid, that we can show up everywhere and nowhere simultaneously.
Yeah. It's the world is filled, like you said, I need to know more. I need to this and this. This is because we are caught in our body. We are falsely identified with the material world. We believe the material world is real. This is, if you've watched the movie The Matrix, this is the whole analogy of the movie The Matrix. If you watch the Star Wars Jedi, this concept it's found in every tradition, in every culture, by the sages and the saintly personalities. And there's this idea that to escape the illusion or the feeling of not being good enough, you must then live some kind of what I'm going to call a pure life. And what pure means is pure consciousness, to recognize yourself as spirit, soul. But it's not good enough just to say, oh, yes, I believe. Oh, I believe in God. It's not good enough. Know God. Don't believe in God. Know God. And how do you get to know God? Well, you got to take up the spiritual practice. You have to want to know God where you are willing to now show up in a different way. You're willing to do different things. You're willing to take up the practice. So there's the believer and there's the knower. Become the knower. It is not good enough to say, I believe. It is I believe in God. You got to know God. Our spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, would say, he says, if I said, go to your neighbor and just have love for your neighbor, and I'm not talking about I'm talking about like a real love for your neighbor, right? Could you do it? No, we have humanly love. We have respect. We have compassion. He says, why can't you do it? Why can't you just go and really have a deep, deep love for your neighbor? He says, because you don't know your neighbor. What would you have to do to have a deep connection or love for your neighbor? You would have to know them. In the same way, for you to truly have a deep connection with Source, you have to know Source. And you cannot whimsically know Source. You can't just say, I believe in you, so that makes you somewhat a believer. Well, it makes you a believer, but it doesn't make you a knower. And there is a difference in energy between the believer and the knower. The believer says, I believe, and then goes and then shows signs of disfaith right away. Oh, but I'm scared to go out and sell. I'm scared to go out and do my thing. I'm too this, I'm too that. I thought you just said you're a believer. So what are you worried about? Oh, there's this wonderful parable. Okay, so this is a Bengali parable. So there was a sage, a very wise man in his own right? And he was a sadhu in India. And there was a very, very simple lady who would come and would come and give him milk each day. But she was often late because she had to cross this big river. And she had to wait for the boatman, right? And the boatman was always late. So one day, the saintly Brahmin priest, this sadhu, was kind of, reaming her out a bit. Why are you always late with the milk? Why can't you be on time? Don't you know that by uttering the names of God that you can cross the ocean of the material world? Utter the names of God and you'll cross the river. Now, this was a very simple woman, right? No education, no nothing. So she believed him. And so every day from that point, she started showing up on time. So this priest was going, what is going on? So he asked, how come you're showing up on time all of a sudden? And the woman said, because you told me, utter the names of God and cross the river. So each day I utter the names of God and I walk across the river. And he couldn't believe it. This priest, right? Right? He couldn't believe it. He was like, really? No way. So he has to go see for himself. So he goes over and he watches this woman start chanting the names of God and crossing the river. And she says, come. And so he picks up his garments and she looks at him and says, why are you picking up your garments? Don't you believe in God? Right? You get it? Right? So it doesn't matter if you're a priest or if you're whatever label you have. Generally, the simplest of people get it because the simplest people are simple in mind. So they're simple in heart. The world is simple. Life is simple. I teach that in business. Nick, how do I become a freedompreneur? It's simple. Do what you love to do. Go out there, help and serve other people doing it. Forget the rest. Don't listen to anybody else. Listen to your mentors. Get what you need, but do you. Follow your heart, right? Don't do it for recognition. Don't do it for the ego. Don't do it for money. Don't do it for recognition. Don't do it for status. Don't do it because, you think that's what you should be doing. All of that stuff, you'll fall. You'll sink. You won't cross the river, right? So in the same way, right. Spirituality, life is so simple. It's only the false ego that makes it complicated.
So to come all the way back to the title of the beautiful struggle, the message is stop struggling. There is no struggle. There could only be the ego that's wrestling with yourself. And if you're wrestling with yourself, and I know many people listening to the show probably are, that what if you were able to take all that energy of wrestling about who you are and how to show up and how to be better or how to make money or do whatever you think you need to be? What if you just gave it all away to your God or to your source or your divine being? What if you just threw it all up in the air and say, hey, if I'm in service to you, then it's your responsibility. My job is to show up. And what would it be like if you were able to do that in this moment? Wouldn't your life be transformed? So I think what you're saying is profound, and I hope people listening to this show can surrender their wrestling with their ego or trying to be better or whatever it is that is occupying them time. Maybe better to go sit by the river, or maybe better to meditate or go have fun or do something other, but stop wrestling with yourself. And there's so many people doing that. It must be from your perspective seeing that. I mean, knowing that it's so simple to see the struggle around you. I guess your excitement just comes from just getting people to realize that it's so simple, right? And seeing the smile on their faces when they get it. But for most people, this is like a huge quantum jump.
Yeah, and like, Srila Prabhupada would teach us it's a process. It's like weaning someone off the material life. It's like weaning a drug addict off drugs, right? It may not happen tomorrow. That's why a spiritual practice is necessary, right? You cannot do it without the practice, unless you have the divine mercy. But I wouldn't bank on that, meaning I wouldn't just hope for it. You have to be a serious seeker, right? And that's what I mean, meaning you have to want to know God. It's not good enough just to say, I believe, and and sit here and listen to us. It's good to listen to us. This is called jnana yoga. Jnana means philosophy. It's intellect. It's by the intellect where we try to understand. It's actually very difficult to understand what this by the intellect. You have to experience. It's like me trying to say, by the intellect, let me tell you what a banana tastes like if you've never tasted a banana. I could be there for years giving you analogies and trying to no. How do you get to know the banana? Taste the banana, right? Just you got to go by. And the practice, I was sitting in the temple, in the Hare Krishna temple in Toronto. This was a really profound, difference in my life, and it was so simple, as it normally is. I was sitting there, and I was sitting in what's called Prabhupada headquarters. So this is the area when our spiritual master was alive, where he would sit and study. So I was sitting and I was reading books, and then Bhaktimarga Swami, known as the walking monk, walked in. And so he says, Nick, how are you? I said, hey, great, Bhaktimarga Swami. And I was reading and we were chatting a bit. And I started to ask him some questions. I had some one-on-one time with him. So I started to ask him questions and he answered the questions. And then he said to me, and this was so profound, he said to me, Nick, you can read all day long, but until you take up the practice, you'll never really get the sweetness of what you're reading. Right? As basically he was telling me, put the book down and start to take up the practice. And then when you read the book, you'll understand it at such a greater level. And since I've done that, it is absolutely truth. We need to stop just consuming ourselves with so much information and not doing the practice. So it's good to come into Sangha. This is Sangha, spiritual discussion, right? And use the intellect to contemplate, what am I? What is God? What is this? This is good. But then you got to go do the practice, because jnana yoga, the intellect, is the longest route to realization. It's the longest path. The quicker path is of experience, taking to the practice.
Yeah, I like that, because we just love our intellect. I mean, we've been taught that our intellect is the grand poopah. I was having a discussion with one of my friends who's in the Tao. I'm also in the Tao, and he was talking about, I have a choice in every moment to come from my true nature, to come from my human mind consciousness, be lost in the trap of that. And he said, well, I've found that I've come up with this practice for myself that, and he does a lot of work in doing websites, lots of tedious, regimented thinking where you got to be very analytical and whatever. And if you do that sort of work, you can get lost in it. So I think he's got it timed for every half hour, maybe it's 15 minutes, where a little bell goes off. And in that moment, in the exact moment, he says, am I coming from my human mind consciousness, or am I coming from my true nature? And I thought, that's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant, to catch yourself unawares. And I've heard this in the Tao, that actually people are doing that in their corporation, that one of the head of a corporation, was a helicopter company, did that for himself. And every time the little bell went off, his employees understood in a meeting what that was. So everybody would ask themselves that question. Wow. And the whole company went through transition. They just, their profits just soared, because everybody knew how to come back into that moment. So I wanted to share that, that these techniques can be so beautiful and so simple, yet so profound. So please, all you people that are listening, keep it simple. This is not, this is not complicated.
Yeah. Mahatma Gandhi said, simple living, high thinking. Right? Simple living, high thinking. So when we simplify our life, the Buddha said that all of our suffering comes from desire. And there is two types of desire. There's the desire of the spirit to serve, to expand. So there are certain things that you're good at that you desire to bring into the world. Do those. But I believe when he talked about desire, I believe that he talked about, the way that I understand in my own experience is, it's the desire of the ego. I desire to be recognized. I desire to have more followers. I desire to, this is all because of coming from a space of I'm not good enough, or I am not whole and complete. I have something to prove. That desire causes us suffering. And that's the desire that we're taught from young, school. That's the desire you were talking about of, I got a B, but I got to get an A. I need my sister's approval. My sister still doesn't approve how I live my life. Right? It's like all of this, we spend our whole life going for the approval of someone who will never approve, because they don't approve of themselves. So how can they approve of you? They'll never, if they don't understand themselves, how could they possibly understand you?
Yes, absolutely true. And that, for that, we have to have compassion, not only for ourselves, but for them, because they know no better. They had no opportunity to learn that for themselves. And all we can do is hope that as parents that we can turn that around, where we're there for our kids and can do the sorts of appreciation to let them know that they're loved in every moment, that it's not whether they're a good hockey player or this or that or whatever. We just love them for who they are. And that, I think that will help turn the corner. Whereas, our parents were so busy trying to get us to do something, or convince us that if we didn't do something, that we weren't going to succeed. And bless them, they didn't know any better. It was just part of their culture, their tradition, the way that they were raised.
Absolutely. It's just, we grew
we
up.
have a lot of people that. Oh, we got lots of people showing up here. And so I just wanted to thank everybody for showing up. And I'm just going to put some comments up here. So Janet says, when your heart is in your dreams, no request is too extreme. Actually, that was Jenny. When your heart is in your dreams, no request is too. I love that. Thank you for that, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Actually, that's from Janet. So thank you, Janet, for showing up. And then this is a comment from Paul. He said Wayne Dwyer studied Taoism. Yes, and who he did.
Hey,
yes.
Paul. Yeah.
And Rosemary Perez. So once we let go of everything falls into place. Yes, indeed.
Thanks, Mom.
Just remember in the moment.
Yeah, that's my mom.
And is that your mom?
Yeah.
Great. And then Paul says, let go of the ego, right?
Yes.
And go with the flow. I love that one. I don't know if this is Janet talking about me in my life because I have a cat, and maybe that's absolutely true. And you too, we clearly
we
think we're in charge. That's right. In fact, one of my talks is by Love Sang Rampa, and it's from his cat's perspective of what it is to try and raise an enlightened human being and how difficult it is. I love that.
That's so funny. Yeah, absolutely. We're so servants of the cat.
Right. And Tamara is giving us a bit. I think that hyphen is a heart.
It is.
And
yes.
Natalie's saying hello back to you. Janet says it's brilliant. Christy says hi, Nick and Tyson. So thank you all for showing up. We really appreciate it. A great show, and I don't know what to say other than I love you for helping us have this discussion. I think this is one of the fundamental discussions that really never seems to happen. That the beautiful struggle isn't a struggle. That we're talking about surrender, pure divine surrender, and I'm truly grateful for that. So Nick, how do people come and play with you in your sandbox?
Sure. Best place is visit my online sandbox at www.coachnickspeaks.com. And you can catch all my other social media stuff out there. And you're right here on Facebook. So you can just add me up to Facebook. That's the best way. And if you go to coachnickspeaks.com, you can register up for my daily inspiration, where I send every morning a daily inspiration to keep you on your path and keeping it simple to live a life of freedom. Oh, geez.
I'll see if I can.
Yeah. I was like, oh, geez. I'm like, now I got to remember everything I said. So I think the basis, it comes down to this. I think you nailed it when you said it's the fundamental conversation of surrender, right? We could talk about all kinds of different things in the world, but what the world, from my perspective, and that's all I could ever give is my perspective, what the world absolutely fundamentally needs is not more intellect, it's not more information, it's not more of anything. It's a transformation of the heart. It is a transformation of the heart. This is what's helped me find joy in my life, peace in my life, is a transformation of the heart, is to realize that we don't live for ourselves, but we live for others. And if we can serve others, then what is the need? There'll be no need for fighting, and there'll be no poverty, and there'll be because we'll have a heart that actually allows us to really go out and serve others. So to me, it all sums up with, don't worry about the rest of it. Just transform your heart, and you will see the miracles in your own life. You won't just believe it, you'll know it.
Nick, thank you ever so much. It's been a joy talking to you. We'll have to have you back on the show and carry on these discussions. So thanks for showing up.
Thank you.
Bye for now.
For quality online wellness products, courses, and services, visit our sponsors, thewellnessstore.ca and the Extraordinary Healing Arts Academy located at thewellnessacademy.ca. To stay in touch, visit us at thewellnessshow.ca. And until next time, be healthy, wealthy, and wise.